I'm sorry to say this, but Europeans and being secret crypto neo-Nazis goes hand in hand sometimes, okay?
Adam something is an unfathomably based European, which I love to see because I'm European, covered, surrounded by all these filthy Americans. Left-leaning, leftist YouTuber who has done a lot of really good coverage on the Ukraine-Russia stuff. And recently, he had a bit of a back and forth with somebody of considerably less intellectual and academic rigor, Hasan Piker. And I'm going to show a clip from that interaction. It's Hasan watching a really good video by Adam something, this one right here, how the Gravel Institute lies to you about Ukraine, which is basically a video in which Adam something reviews a Gravel Institute video that is framed in a very odd way that really favors the Russian narrative on everything that's going on in Ukraine. So much so that the Gravel Institute have even privated that video. So it seems like even the Gravel Institute themselves realized that, like, hey, maybe we fucked up a bit here, Or maybe it was just a cynical reason that they were getting bad engagement, whatever it would have been. But regardless, they even privated themselves. Good video by Adam something here. Good analysis. Good fact-checking, really good breakdown of isolating the claims. Overall, really good video. And Hasan watched this video from Adam something, and this occurred.
Well, technically, they admitted that only 10 to 20%. Adam something posted a 40-minute video about how Gravel lies about Azov, so a bunch of Euro sock dems might come in here being fucking annoying. Dude.
That's me. I'm the Euro sock dems who's going to come in here to be annoying.
I'm sorry to say this, but, Europeans and fucking being secret crypto neo-Nazis goes hand in hand sometimes, okay? Europe and pro-NATO Europeans being a fucking fan of Nazis or running defense for Nazis is not exactly news to me, okay? Holy shit. Also, Adam something, look, I know he's got some good videos on fucking, engineering stuff, but deeply, deeply fucking frustrating to constantly have this conversation, especially when it's literally an ex-alt-right guy who was a Nazi until like literally a fucking year ago, okay? Maybe it's real comfortable for someone to fall back into those propaganda talking points.
Jesus Christ. Okay, first of all, blatant Europhobia here will not be stood for. Unbelievable. But also, what the fuck's the implication here is that, hey, European pro-NATO people, and then by extension Adam something specifically he names there, are likely to be crypto neo-Nazis, which that is a jump in logic, a spectacle of mental gymnastics that, oh boy, if that were able to be materialized, that shit would win the gold medal at every gymnastics Olympic event ever. But regardless, Adam something had a response to this that he wrote up in the community tab, and it goes as follows. And I would go here, I would go and bully Hasan for this, I will go off on him, but Adam something does it way better, and I want to cover it. So, from the community tab of Adam something, let's not spoil this in case you read ahead. So apparently, Hasan called me a Nazi following my recent video on the Gravel Institute. Here is the clip of it. Now, I don't want people to give Hasan too much shit because of this. I understand he's under a lot of stress. Lots of people have been dogpiling on him, me included, over his Ukraine stakes. Such takes of his are the product of his simplistic American lefty streamer bro views being thrown into the vortex of nuance that is Europe. Worse, a European armed conflict. Based, Adam something. Finally putting some respect on our name. As a European myself, this is of course nothing new to me, which is why I've been able to make detailed, nuanced points even when it comes to actual neo-Nazis in Ukraine, instead of the expected knee-jerk dismissal and denunciation. People who aren't familiar with the complexities of Europe and Ukraine, and especially the current war, might find those takes of mine scary at first, which I understand. Disingenuous people might even say that I was defending Nazis in my video on the Grail Institute, but this is of course not the case. People who say that are either lying or haven't watched the actual video. So, beyond making, funny, haha, Europe good jokes, what's the truth to what he's saying about Europe being, more complex than America when it comes to a lot of stuff? There's definitely tenets of truth to this, and I'll give one example. So, for instance, as compared to the United States of America, Europe doesn't have, really peaceful or great relations with its neighbors in the same way that the US does. The US has great relations with Canada. It has good relations with Mexico. those types of worries aren't really there in the same place as compared to Europe and the history of Europe and the, the theater of Europe, I think it was called, and the fact that there are still hostile countries on the borders of European nations, namely Russia, for instance, that make the situation a whole lot more complicated. Furthermore, Europe is a fucking continent, right? There is so many different countries in Europe, so many different countries with different parliaments, different political systems, different political ideas, different demographics, different histories, different everythings. Whereas America, people say America to mean the United States, in which case it's just one country. But even if we take America to mean North America, it's like, it's two countries, right? So that's also another reason why it's more simplistic. And also just, even though it's not super important, because obviously the farther away we go in history, the more contemporary things matters. But the history of Europe is a lot longer than the history of the United States of America. Granted, I don't think that's super significant because, America was created like, some 300, 400 years ago. So yeah, 300 years, 1776, I think it was, right? Yeah, it's a younger state, but obviously nowadays, I don't know how much of the previous history matters, but that's just another thing to add up. So there are a lot of reasons why a lot of European things may be a lot more complicated than what the American thinks are. That's true. Now, what is Adam Something's take on the Nazis in Ukraine? There are military, like militias in Ukraine that have a very far right bend and that have Nazi, affiliations and Nazi ideologies. This is true, 100%. Do these people have massive control over the government of Ukraine? No. Are these people a big problem in Ukraine domestically? No. Is Ukraine a Nazi country? No. What they do have is they have the military faction. And when you're on an all hands on deck situation, and you need any kind of military force you can, especially competent military forces, when you're literally being invaded or when there's a civil war going on between groups that are backed by Russian interests, you need all hands on deck. And especially need competent hands on deck. And, some of them are going to be groups that may have political beliefs that you don't 100% agree with or that are reprehensible in themselves. But in this situation, it's needed because Nazis the Ukraine Nazis really dislike Russian interest and Russian meddling in Ukraine. So they have a big incentive. And then even then, you can make the argument that, hey, even if you don't really like the Nazis, isn't a good way to get rid of them, to send them to fight against the, Russians? That way you defend Ukraine and all the positives to that. And you also get less Nazis because the Nazis die in the war. It's a chaos situation. It's not like a thing where you can sit there and carefully pick and choose who you want to ally with when a current invasion is going on. It's an all hands on deck situations against a power that's much stronger than yours. And when you have competent militias that are just sitting there who are frothing at the mouth, ready to defend against the Russians, it's silly maneuver. It's an irresponsible maneuver. It's a dangerous maneuver. It's a maneuver that risks the safety and the well-being and the integrity of the Russian peoples to not let them go there and do their part in defending Ukraine. Which is basically Adam Something's take. Does that mean that Adam Something is pro-Nazis? No. Does he think that the Nazis battalion should be super, super strong and should be the dominant force of the military? No. It just means that in an emergency situation, you must act in a way that, is required of an emergency. And you must have all hands on deck in these situations. Let's keep reading. Hasan didn't mean to insult me. He simply reached to the narrow limits of his understanding of the world, and since he couldn't control the resulting emotional outbursts, made up of fear, confusion, and frustration. And since then, he couldn't control the resulting emotional outbursts. For all these years, he and others like him were able to surf the waves of Bernie Sanders, a person with an actual overarching political philosophy and nuanced worldview. By attaching themselves to Bernie's correct points, these commentators were able to conceal that all their views are just a variation of the same 3 or 4 half-baked, disjointed ideas in lieu of a coherent set of values and understanding of the world outside America. This is so true. This is unfathomably based, okay? Bernie Sanders is not like all the online political commentators you see that are proud Bernie supporters. Bernie Sanders is infinitely more politically competent, more rhetorically effective, and is more politically intelligent than what these people are, okay? Bernie Sanders, if you go look through his history, if you go look through what he's done, he will not die on silly, virtue-signally hills. He will not hinder real progress in the meantime in order to state support over some, long-term socialist utopia or whatever, which a lot of these streamer people will do. He will understand the situation that exists in right now and engage in real political action, push for realistic policies, and do things such as pull out of the race and endorse a potential opposition candidate such as Joe Biden if it means stopping Trump from getting to office. When a lot of these other people were Bernie and Busters and who would rather see, the country be put in the hands of Trump again for another 4 years and increase the risk for that happening than support a more moderate Democratic candidate. And all these commentators who have latched onto Bernie Sanders like a leech and are using his incredible political project, his incredible political ambitions, and his, political maneuvering or whatever, in order to attach their own bloated and ineffective political agendas, it's awful. They are not the same, and Bernie Sanders would be disappointed by a lot of the other people that you see going around here touting, like his message or whatever, who have latched themselves onto his movement while understanding none of the nuances and none of the complexities of what Bernie Sanders is doing in, U.S. politics. Trying to scale these views to an issue more complex than U.S. domestic affairs has been a disaster, unsurprisingly. With the war in Ukraine, Hasan, like many other American lefties, was brought to a humiliating realization. U.S. bad is not a political philosophy. Based. Hasan tweeted about this. So here we have a clip from Adam Something's message. As a European myself, this is of course nothing new to me, which is why I've been able to make detailed, nuanced points even when it comes to actual neo-Nazis in Ukraine, instead of the expected knee-jerk dismissal and denunciation. Then a second one here, which is just the zoomed-in photo of that quote that was already highlighted in the previous image, because anyone who watches Hasan definitely needs a second image to ensure that we know that we're talking about. People like Hasan are the reason why we have the big red arrows and circles on all of our YouTube thumbnails at this point. And then we have another post here. A nuclear war right now would not be the end of humanity. Sure, it would suck, but that means a lot of people dying, at least 1 billion plus. However, it wouldn't erase life on the planet, which is probably true. Nuclear war is a negative thing, and I don't think Adam Something is in favor of NATO involvement and escalating the risk for nuclear war. But you probably wouldn't kill every single human being, which this just seems like this is probably correct. But Hasan really doesn't like Adam. Maybe he interprets this as Adam saying that we should go to nuclear war. I'm not quite sure. But yeah. And then we have Hasan's, his text here. You simply do not have the high European IQ to understand my highly nuanced takes, such as arming ultranationalist neo-Nazi groups whenever cause blowback, that nuclear winter isn't all that bad. So once again, that's I think what Adam Something is pushing back against here about the idea that, if there's war, everything will be absolutely obliterated, 100% everything will be sent back to but obviously I don't think this is the really important thing. I think we're going to focus more on the first thing here about the European things. But yeah, arming ultranationalist neo-Nazi groups won't ever cause blowback. This is such a weak-willed way of saying Hasan's criticism. Remember, Hasan started this by saying that Adam Something is a Nazi. And now Hasan has scaled this back to, arming ultranationalist neo-Nazi groups, it might cause some blowback here and there. It might not be a good thing, which is, once again, a massive shifting of a goalpost, which is important to recognize. But I want to ask Hasan, what does he think that should happen? Should the Ukrainian government sit back and watch more Ukrainians die than necessary if it meant not giving, ultranationalist groups the ability to go and fight against the invading force that is Russia, that are committing humanitarian atrocities, that are, cutting off humanitarian supply routes and are leading to the death and the starvation and all these terrible, horrible things that are happening to the Ukrainian people because of a, potential blowback or whatever in the future? Or is the right thing to do in this situation to be like, hey, it's an all hands on deck situation. We need things like this going on. We need to put everyone there. We need to do what we can towards fighting off the invasion. It sucks, but we need men. We need soldiers. We need manpower, okay? But yeah. Let's read Adam Something's second response down here. Hasan's Twitter tantrum about me is a very useful lesson about reactionary thinking and intellectual honesty. He posted 2 screenshots of 2 of my posts, one where I discussed nuclear war, the other where I responded to him calling me a Nazi. He then highlighted 2 small sections from each post and made some choice comments ignoring the rest of what I wrote. Of the things he wrote, my favorite is, I love when people change for the better and leave the alt-right. I don't love it when people who were watching Sargon of Akkad vids while I was covering the US arming Nazis tells me I simply cannot think in a nuanced way about such things. And so a choice method of Sargon and people like him back then was to find posts/videos by feminists where the latter makes a reasonable but controversial point. For example, the feminists would write a long post about how gender is a social construct. If you read what they wrote as a whole, their posts are actually quite agreeable. However, Sargon would then zero in on a sentence like, and if you're being a biological man, there's nothing fundamental stopping you from identifying as a woman. He would highlight it and then post it with a caption like, look at these feminists thinking men can be women. Truly the end of Western civilization in it. Then his audience would pile into the comments screeching about SJWs, degeneracy, and how there are only two genders, etc., without any of them having ever engaged with the arguments made by the feminists in that post. Sargon wouldn't engage with the arguments either, because he didn't actually read the post or consider it intellectually. He just scanned it for something objectionable to highlight, and that was the end of his intellectual engagement. Needless to say, such attitude is prime reactionary thinking, carrying the nuance of an online lynch mob. I broke away from this when I moved left a while ago, having realized how this can pull one down a very dangerous rabbit hole. But then there's Hasan, who has been covering US arming Nazis when I was watching Sargon vids, doing the exact same thing without any thoughts or introspection. While both Hasan and I are leftists, we are nothing like each other. I'm a leftist of consideration, while Hasan is a leftist of sheer circumstance. Morally lucky, one might say. Had he been born in a different environment, he would very well be typing out anti-feminist posts on Twitter right now. Which there's a bit of a history about that in terms of Hasan, but we need to go that deep into stuff right now. He'd only need to switch out a few words as the rhetoric and thinking are already the same. In contrast, I feel like I'd find my way to leftism eventually, even if I was born into different environments. I would likely get caught up in reactionary thinking, but eventually analytical thinking would prevail over my feelings. All the same, I would then be typing out detailed posts about my positions. Hasan could then read those posts and consider them intellectually, but alas, Hasan of Akkad cannot read. Damn! So once again, poking fun at the fact that Hasan probably ignored all the broader thing to signal one quote, kind of similar to what Sargon of Akkad does. And this is a good fucking write-up. So what I think the key thing here that is important to focus on is that, number one, Hasan's way of engaging with media. We know that this is true because we just know we see the way that Hasan engaged with media and the way, like, you know, there's a classic one, right, of somebody sending a video and it's like a short video. It's like literally a video game thing. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. And then someone's like, this is from Arma 2. And it's like, fuck, whoops, my bad, huh? You know, and there's like 9 million other better examples. That's a bit of a frivolous one, but regardless, you get my point. But then the important part here is that the difference between Adam something as a leftist and Hasan as a leftist. We can draw really strong inferences, and we know from a lot of different examples that Hasan doesn't understand a lot of what he's talking about. At all, really. A great example of this, recent one, was his arguments about, for example, trans stuff. He wasn't aware of, he hadn't considered the basics of arguments people often make against trans people and good arguments to make in favor of, you know, trans rights and stuff like that in general. And because of that, he performed poorly in a debate in front of thousands of people when he had some conservative dude, Christian Walker, over. And then when people tried to criticize him and give him feedback on what he did, he told them to basically live a miserable existence and to go fuck themselves and ban them. And yeah, these are the type of examples that Hasan doesn't actually likely understand a lot or anything of what he's talking about and what he claims to be in support of. It's most likely that it's just, hey, this is what's, you know, kind of popular at the moment. This is what's hip with the kids. So I'm just gonna throw my weight behind this. But God, please don't ask me to ever defend any of this because, I don't understand the basic core concepts and tenets of any of the things we're discussing. I just got morally lucky. I am a leftist out of sheer circumstance. Basically, that's the situation that Hasan is in right now, and I think that's something that Adam something adequately points out here. And yeah, this post doesn't mean that Adam something is in favor of nuclear war. He's definitely not. This is just like, hey, you know, right now there's a lot of worries right now. Everyone is like feeling super, super worried about everything about the, you know, like nuclear war and stuff like that. It's affecting a lot of people, you know, negatively mentally. Here's a bit of a hopium pill of like, hey, you know, there is life after potential nuclear war. Not to say that the cost isn't massive, Not to say that millions or even billions of people won't die, but just to say that, like, hey, here's some little pinch of realism that hopefully will stop you from spiraling when you hear all these negative news coming on. And Hasan picked that up to talk about how this crypto European neo-Nazi or whatever now doesn't think that nuclear war is a big thing, which is, yeah, it's ridiculous. And then we have the Giga Chad grass touching response here as well. Hey folks, to reiterate, this is as far as I'll go with this drama, since I had better things to do. I felt it was necessary to lay into a Sunville, considering he is the largest left streamer on the planet. Wow. All in all, Adam Something is based. Go watch his videos. Good video. This one specifically. I mean, it's relevant to what we're talking about. And once again, and I said this in my previous segment, and I will say this again, and I cannot stress this enough, Hasan Piker is a dumb fuck.